They were awesome. Did you guys do? Louisa did. I was reading that, but it was back out again with the EPA. Louisa loves her. Good morning. We'll now call the November 10th, 2022 Executive Committee for PlanRVA meeting to order. Ms. Firestone, thank you, ma'am. We're going to do the roll call. I will say this, and we'll make an announcement at the full meeting that we anticipate having some Zoom issues, not with us, but actually with Zoom. We're not saying that that's going to happen, but with the audio. Apparently there was an update, and our executive director kindly told me yesterday that you said that he's updated his Facebook, but we should have a pretty good attendance in person. We just wanted folks to be aware of that. So Ms. Firestone, if you'll call the roll, ma'am. Hey, Dr.
Certainly. Charles City County, Mr. Atkins.
Here.
Chesterfield County, Mr. Winslow.
Extra.
City of Richmond, Dr. Newbill.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Spoonhour.
Here.
Hanover County, Chair Davis.
Present.
Henrico County, Reverend Nelson. New Kent County, Ms. Page. Powhatan County, Vice Chair Byerly.
Here.
And Town of Ashland, Dr. McGraw.
Present.
Thank you. That concludes the roll call for attendance, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you for that confirmation. The next item on the agenda is a request for approval of minutes. Have all executive committee members had an opportunity to review the minutes? Are there any requested changes or additions? Is there a motion to approve? We have a motion by Dr. Newbill and from Ms. Page is a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Yep. Next item on the agenda is old business. We're going to go over to, I'm going to turn it over to Executive Director for new office space and again, our key imperatives, which we've been working on. So Ms. Eder, thank you, ma'am.
Well, good morning. Just wanted to give you all a couple of updates on our new office space. Some of you have had a chance to get by the new space at 424 Hull Street, the current, and progress is moving forward. I'm very excited about that. Wanted to give you a couple of updates about just where we are with the timeline and the budget, but also to be able to just share a couple of topics that Chairman Davis and I have been talking about. So first updates. We had our project status meeting yesterday. We meet every Wednesday at 11 o'clock. It was a virtual meeting yesterday. Painting has started. The millwork in the kitchen has started, which is the installation of the built-in cabinets. I think the island is scheduled for maybe next week. The ceiling on the lobby area, if you've been through the site, that is going to remain as the unfinished concrete. And so that's a sealing process there. And the rest of the flooring throughout the space in the meeting rooms and in the office area are carpeted. Progress is going remarkably well. The project timeline has been updated to reflect a certificate of occupancy walkthrough with the city on November 23rd, which is the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So we're very excited about that. We're scheduled to do a Monday morning walk, or probably Monday afternoon walkthrough for punch list on the 21st. And the idea is that we'll get our CO on the 23rd, break for the Thanksgiving holiday. Our move in and installation team will start on Monday, the 28th, and consume most of that week for the installation of the workstations, moving our belongings and furniture up from the second floor, and installation of our network and other technology equipment. We probably will not schedule the AV installation for the boardroom until the week later, just to be able to minimize some of the commotion in the space, but we're really excited about that and would expect to be able to let staff know that they would be invited to come into the office starting the week of December 5th to be able to unpack their belongings and log on. So We're really excited about that. I would say that we are in discussions, which leads me to my next point, about the possibility of hosting some of our meetings that might be scheduled in December in the space, just because it has proved difficult to find as many locations as we needed for the scheduled meetings this month and in December that meet our specifications. So I want to call attention to the fact that we're here at the Community Foundation this morning. They've hosted us now for a couple of meetings, and I think have done just a really wonderful job in setting up the equipment and the technology to accommodate us. But I think I, in particular, am finding how high maintenance of a guest we are. So I think we're interested in sort of figuring out whether we have the ability to host some of our committee meetings in the space even before maybe we're fully company ready. So we'll keep you posted on that. Some of the lessons learned that I have from this process are definitely that partially because of COVID, some spaces are just not available to outside groups that would be large enough to meet our needs and would have the technology and AV equipment. But also there are not a lot of kind of community spaces. So this and some of the other locations that we'll be meeting around the region are, I think, good and quality locations, but it's really illuminating for many of us on the team that our new space at the current is probably going to be one that will be in demand for other organizations. So I think one thing that we have talked about is coming back to the executive committee with a proposal for how we would go about managing that new space. I will share with you that you may not be surprised, but the space at Stony Point was not highly requested, but I think that the new space likely will be. So I think we want to come back to you with some parameters of certainly first right of refusal for the organizations that we support, but then how might we go about setting certain guidelines for who and under what conditions we let outside organizations use our space. That'll be something I think coming back to the committee over the next couple of months. Let's see, what else can I share? The finance committee will be meeting on November 17th at the current. I think the current the present thinking is that we will meet up in the 6th floor. The current is becoming kind of a tricky word to use, so I'm trying to be careful about that. I think the plan is that we're going to move our meeting up to the 6th floor. Those of you that were in the meeting room on the 1st floor for the last finance committee meeting, the door has been fixed, but the acoustics are still a little bit difficult with the bouncing of the noise. So we're trying to work on that. Yeah, I think some sound absorption would be good. So yeah, those are kind of the updates on that. One last update by way of building. Just wanted to be able to also share that we'll be coming back to this committee with a recommendation for how to manage security. A couple of updates for you. We will have a key fob security system. That fob will be programmed such that it can enable those that it's been issued to enter and exit the parking garage, and it'll direct bill to the commission. So when I, for example, swipe my fob at the parking garage kiosk, it says, "Hi, Martha Heater. How are you today?" So it knows who you are and how to charge those parking fees. That same fob enables me to move throughout the building in the areas where the building has granted me access. And that same fob will enable me to access our suite. So we do, as part of our lease agreement, have 71 fobs that will be available to us. That sounds like a large number, but when you deduct the staff and then I think some key folks, we will not be able to issue fobs to everybody that sits on our various governing boards and committees. So the thought is that we will come back to the executive committee to have a system by which you've approved that we would issue fobs to non-staff members. Thanks.
So we had talked about that. I mean, 71 does sound like a lot, but these boards and commissions are rather large. So the idea was obviously leadership teams and executive committees and those types of things, but then you break that down to TPOs and then TAC, and you got all these different folks who may need to come and go. So I think it's we're going to be obviously the governing body on making a decision who gets the fob. Some folks may not want one. Maybe they sit on an executive committee, but I would just ask that that's something that you think about. And in that same vein, we've kind of talked a little bit about parking. Martha and I've spoken about that. There's a couple of ways to do that. They do have license plate readers that would recognize your license plate. So you just pull up. So, myself, Dr. Newbill, Dr. McGraw there, and it reads our license plate and off you go. Now, of course, if you changed your license plate, that might be an issue. But that's just a convenience matter. If someone wanted to, any commission member, you come in, you hit the ticket, we'll have barcodes, parking is validated. So that's just a matter of convenience. I think it's at the pleasure of whatever the executive committee wants to do. But that being said, that could be a lot of turnover and administrative things. I don't know if folks would be overly burdened by getting a parking ticket and then having a barcode placed on it. We can have barcodes, but if you'll be thinking about those two, I suspect most commission members would use their fob on meeting days or special meetings or meeting with Martha or something like that, but not quite sure. We don't want to run into a situation where somebody, I guess, wanted a fob for whatever reason and felt like they couldn't get one. I suspect most people that I know that hold public office would prefer not to have something else to keep up with, but it's certainly at the pleasure of that. But it is something we thought about because we are in a lease space and it's very different from where we were in the past. And so Martha and I kind of had, I don't want to say extensive conversations, but we talked about, we want to be certainly give deference to those who are serving on the commission and all of the other organizations that meet or that are going to meet in that space. So.
Thank you. The final thing I'll note on that is that this has given me an opportunity to think a little bit differently about security. I know most of your local government buildings have gone through probably quite a change over the last couple of years in the way that you handle security protocols and access. So we've been going through the same thing. We did consult with the Richmond Police Department, explain to them the frequency of each month that we have the region's elected leaders in one room. And they gave us, I think, some great advice. So we will have a security camera installed that points toward the front entrance of the space. That will be the main enter and exit point for the office space. So that should anything happen, we would have footage to be able to turn over to the police authorities as necessary. That'll be backed up off-site, all of those kinds of things. We've been consulting with Johnson Controls, formerly Richmond Alarm, to make sure that that's appropriately suited for us. We will also have exit doors from I'll say like the rear sides of our office space that would go into the exterior hallway where the restrooms are located. Those would be leave only, exit only doors. And so the idea would be that they would be punch code restricted. So personnel who do know the punch code would be able to punch code back in. But I do want to share with that little nuance with you so that if as a commissioner, you were leaving the room to maybe use the restroom or go into the outside hall there to take a phone call or whatnot, you would need to come back through the front door so that we can kind of maintain that flow of entrance and awareness. We are trying to balance convenience with security. That is, those are not always aligned. So we will certainly be interested in feedback, but we've been trying to be thoughtful about that and make sure that everybody is safe and protected. Similarly, I wanted to note part of the design of the office is that our community and meeting space is at one section of the office space. The working spaces are on the other. So we do have the ability to literally close the door and restrict access across the suite so that if there were an event in the evening time or where staff work areas were, we would actually be able to close that door and have it restricted access so that we could still host open house public meeting type things in the evening time, especially when there might not be as many staff members roaming around. So just a couple of points on that. Did you want me to talk through that?
Yeah, and so was some talk from different commissioners about the hybrid schedule. Certainly pandemic and now, post-pandemic, going back to different types of work schedules. A number of people approached me, and I think Mr. Byron and I talked a little bit about it on how we were going to approach the hybrid work schedule. I think the general idea is that we still want to offer some flexibility. Some of that's not just from a health safety standpoint, but because some times have changed and we want to offer that flexibility, and a lot of folks are doing that now, private sector, public sector. But we had to have some type of consistency for those we serve to know when we're open and what we're doing. And because we're a regional body and our folks work on planning, sometimes you have to come together and you have to work on things. So I didn't get anything from any commission members or executive team members that said they wanted to wholly abolish the hybrid schedule, but they did want to have some consistency. So Martha and I spoke, kind of came up with some things to present. Certainly haven't made a decision. And that was offering some type of consistency, having core days of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but certainly not having Friday and Monday where you end up having, 4 days. Somebody leaves on Thursday and they don't come back until Tuesday. That wasn't going to work. So we kind of came up with some ideas to present and wanted to get this body's idea on what y'all thought this plan might be. And again, it's not been endorsed by me or Martha or any vice chair or anything. We just kind of did some ditch digging and wanted to bring it up. So I'm going to open it up to kind of workshop format. So if you have something to say, please jump in and try to figure this out. And I think we are going to have to bring this up to the full commission because some folks have talked about what's our consistent work schedule for our employee base. So you want to kind of go over what we talked about?
Sure. I'll just give everyone a little bit of background so that you know how we're functioning now. We did work with Telework Virginia. They're a state-supported technical assistance provider who helped us go through a process to design our telework policy and to be able to go through training with our staff, tips and tricks around time management, communication. We had a separate training for our supervisors to be able to think about the differences between managing a staff member remotely versus when you can just pop down the hall and talk to them in person. So all of those things fed into the development of the program that we have now. Currently, staff are encouraged to be in the office as much as they need to get their work done. Tuesdays and Thursdays have been designated as core in-office days. The purpose of that is to make sure that not only are staff in the office to kind of check an attendance box, but really to be able to make sure that staff know that they can count on those 2 days where they can interact with their colleagues in person. The point of that is not so much, frankly, that we're trying to manage folks' time and schedule, but we really want to be able to make sure that if they're coming into the office, they're going to have a reason to be there, which is their colleagues. Those 2 days also happen to be days that are heavy on meetings that we're hosting. So it makes sense to also have the support team standing behind the people that you typically see in the meetings in person, so that we have that depth of support kind of behind the scenes as well as on the front lines. A lot of that schedule was driven by the fact that, as many of you know, we had some precarious situations as far as where people were working and how they were working in our space. The uptick in Zoom meetings and virtual meetings has made it a little bit more difficult for staff members who shared offices. And so we wanted to be able to provide that flexibility so that if you're on a Zoom call or you're participating in a webinar or whatnot, certainly most of our staff members do use headphones, but they're still talking. And so that can be disruptive to another person who may or may not be on that same call. So we've tried to be able to balance that. We've also had a number of staff members that have been sitting in more of what I would call like an open area. So, that was a little bit of an adjustment about, maybe you're sitting in an area where there's a room divider. I'll use SID as an example, but there might be staff members that are trying to have an in-person meeting right on the other side of that room divider. So being able to create that flexibility. I think in our new space, that's a little bit more intentionally designed for movement and for today's work stream and mode of communicating, I think will help to mitigate that a lot. But we probably all know that from a workforce retention perspective, some element of schedule flexibility is appreciated, if not mandated by employees these days. So I think that we are really open to exploring what excitement the new space offers and generates in getting staff back to work. I know, or back into the office, I should say. They've always been working. But the discussions that we have had with staff members, I think, are leaning toward a recognition that while I would not say that productivity waned during this time of remote work through the pandemic and then this month, I think elements of creativity waned. And I think that that's recognized by many of our staff members, that when they don't have that opportunity to kind of pull up face to face, as most of us know, you just lose some of that sort of organic opportunity. And I think most of our staff members are craving that. And so we are seeking to have a set of guidelines that kind of balance all of those things to be able to stimulate the right kind of work in our agency.
So having one day that you can work remote and then having that flexibility on a second day, the idea was somebody said, Martha and I were talking, they have a family issue or, have to take somebody to a doctor's appointment or whatever. They don't have to take PTO for that day, but they could pull up their computer and work in the doctor's office or whatever. Wouldn't charge them PTO for that and could still use that as part of their flex day. But having some core days, I had mentioned that if you take Monday one week, you could take Friday the next week or whatever, and not have the same day. I don't know that I was able to really get into minutia of that. You just want some consistency and making sure that folks are available and that because we are a planning organization that folks are there doing the things that need to be done from a creativity standpoint and the workload standpoint. Yeah, Mr. Spoonow.
Sure. I'll jump in, and it's funny you said the word consistently because I used to drive HR nuts because I used to tell them all the time I manage consistently inconsistent. I'm never a fan of blanket policies. One of the things that excited me about moving to this location, and I think one of our first pull-ups, Martha, was that we talked about, well, we might have a place where we actually have foot traffic. People see our sign, they can come going, hey, what's PlanRVA? What are y'all working on? And that excited me. So I'd be curious to see what that turns into. Like, will we have more people, walking up to our buildings? And for me, I worked with most of my career, the last 5 years, my bosses made me drive 35 miles to work to manage people that lived overseas. So I was searching all day for huddle room. We call them huddle rooms, like places that I can go have calls. When I think about our staff, I would rather see some of our staff actually maybe hardly ever in the office, but they're always out in the localities working with their clients. Like who are our clients? So I say all that to say, I think we need to look at and measure how things are going. So I think Ms. Heater, you've done an amazing job at understanding how projects are going, being able to measure productivity, being able to measure the foot traffic of if we're bringing people into an office that public or officials never see, what is their value in that other than that perception that, hey, we're government, so we have to work for people. I think for me, it's about if I need to talk to Sid or if I need to talk to Janice, I can access them. I'm not going to drive in from Goochland to see them. So I understand the necessity. Again, like I started this conversation, I used to drive HR nuts, but I do believe in doing what makes sense and what's the best for folks. So, managing that and allowing Ms. Heater as the executive director to manage her staff to meet her clients who are also citizens, the citizens' needs would be what I would appreciate. My suggestion is that we start somewhere and then iterate to great. Like, so, hey, we're going to start with this and then be able to and measure it. Whatever we do, find some way to measure it and then be able to talk about, okay, well, this is working or this isn't.
Yes, sir. Sure. No reason at all. That's right.
Question was, can we just say, every employee, you got 2 days, you can work remotely if you wish?
Yeah.
How many people are going to be here? When we talk about the space, how is the space for work? All the stories that I have heard I don't know if I believe in micromanaging people. Maybe sure people talk to them. Probably the rest of them. But I think that you should at least after. And how many people actually want to come to work?
Yeah, I think Martha's got a pretty good, she spoke, you kind of got a, I think, a flavor for that now. I mean, certainly they all want to work. I know Martha talked about that, but do you have a general idea of
Well, I will.
what the flexibility might
will
be
share.
desired?
I have not presented an option to staff where they could be 100% remote. So I have not had a staff member say, I want to be 100% remote. I think that we certainly have had staff members take advantage of the Monday, Wednesday, Friday remote work opportunity that is currently permitted. It is not a blanket policy. It is based on the supervisor and the employee agreeing that that is an appropriate schedule for that employee. So it just so happens that everybody on our staff has been able to manage themselves in a way that they have remained eligible. We do have a number of staff. I'm looking at some of the folks in the room who might be able to help me. I would say that on a given Wednesday in particular, there have been as many as half of the people in the office, just because they recognize kind of what you're saying. I don't like to work from home, to be quite honest from you, every once in a while, but not all the time. We have a number of staff that are like that. We have another set of staff that this has been a really just a phenomenal opportunity for them because of things happening in their lives. And this has really been able to help them structure and organize their schedule. I will say too, that I would not say that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, if staff aren't in the office, they're at home. They are, in many instances doing as Mr. Spoonhauer indicated, and they are, and Tuesdays and Thursdays. I mean, we don't say, oh, we can't come to Goochland because that's my in-office day. So, I think that that's another piece of this puzzle, is just because they're not in the office does not mean that they are at home. But I'm not answering your question, I guess, but I think if not all, most of our staff agree that there is benefit to being in person on some regularity, because they miss their colleagues and they enjoy being in presence with them to be able to communicate. It's the video screen is incredibly efficient, but it's not always the right mode to communicate.
Office space, so, my workspace might be 10 minutes, 20 minutes after this meeting, or sitting in my car somewhere. Certainly I understand that. And I don't know, I think that my opinion matters, but I think that I'm so old that we're just used to seeing people in place. And so there has been something that I've had to absolutely become more open-minded about. I know that in a lot of cases, people are more, their productivity is higher. And so I realize that I think that I don't see where we are lacking, but I would at least offer the opportunity for those that that wanted to come in on a regular basis or 4 days a week, whatever, just to see, maybe what their thoughts are. And of course, I know that we have to have some staff that truly needs to be here every day.
One of the things I would encourage students here to consider in some sort of performance evaluation and potential competency area. What we did was, we let the work. If there's a day where you're gonna be done nothing conference calls, that's stupid day to every other. There's a day where you're gonna have collaborative meetings. So we would use metrics like teamwork or engagement. To say, well, gosh, we have these collaborative meetings, you dial in all the time, so we're not here, we don't have any. Get that feedback.
If you don't, I'm sorry, if everybody doesn't mind, I know we can hear each other, but we're trying to, the
That was
recording.
really good stuff.
Thank you.
Your point, Martha, earlier, a good supervisor, and the way you've been doing it, a good supervisor is going to recognize the days when you need to be in for those meetings that require the greatest amount of engagement, and then not, and then those other days. And so I really think that supervisors can adequately manage this. And just in our law office, I will say we've had some times when it's like, okay, everybody in the office can't take the same week of vacation. So we can't, we got to have certain amount of continuity. And so I think, but that's what a supervisor does. And so your directs, I think, can hopefully manage that in a way that's reasonable and that identifies those times when you need the greatest amount of engagement and productivity here versus increasing that productivity by giving people freedom to do what they need to do if it's a day conference calls, to Mr. Spoonhour's point.
Mr. Vice Chairman, yes, sir.
In listening to what, thank you, everybody's saying, I mean, to me, I think that if you have the right people, they make these decisions, and I mean, right department heads or supervisors, they make the decisions of the people that are working under them. Is that person someone who is productive when they're in the group or at the location versus are they maybe more productive? Each individual is different. And if we can curtail it to where it applies to that situation, I think maybe the motivating factors are you want to attract good quality people and you want to retain them. So if you have the opportunity to offer the 2 days, that doesn't mean everybody wants the 2 days. And that doesn't necessarily mean that those who want the 2 days are most productive when they're away. Maybe they're more productive when they are there on premise. I think that there are definitely some that are much more, as you said, organically creative when they're with people. So to put I guess the decision to whether an employee is 2 days or maybe 1 day, give that employee that opportunity and that supervisor or department head the opportunity to decide what works best for the best productivity for the staff and the organization.
Just to respond, that's what we're doing now. I mean, like I said, we have staff members who are there 5 days a week. We have staff members that are there 4. We have staff members that are there 2. I mean, it's so.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Yeah, I apologize.
No, I think that hybrid is where we are in the world. I like the option of if folks want to create that flexibility, but that there is a defined period number of days that you'll do it based on as you talk about meetings with them. So if that's a couple of days a week, which is what we're doing, that seems totally, but also giving people the flexibility if they want to work in office versus at home. And so it would be more of a combination. The required date based on the organization. And then the opportunity for people to work from home or office space. But it wouldn't be
I was speaking to some business folks the other day and a senior partner at a law firm told me that they pulled up with a number of the associates and said, stop scheduling Zoom calls as often as you said. They were doing 30-minute Zoom calls. Like, if you need to speak to a client, you can still pick up the telephone and have a 5 or 10-minute phone call. When you schedule Zoom, you're there for 30. And they told them, I said, stop. We didn't use Zoom in the past. It's a great tool, but use your telephone, and send an email if that's all it takes. But when you schedule 3 Zoom calls today, that's an hour and a half that you're away from other things. So, and to the point about managing people, I had somebody told me one time, said, are you doing monthly counseling sessions with employees? And I said, certainly not. And if I had to have monthly counseling sessions, then I've obviously made the wrong hire, right? So I do think that you offer that. I mean, folks that generally want to be in this field, they didn't just yuck up on a online ad and decide they were going to come to a planning district commission. They want to be in this industry. And to that point, sometimes you have folks that are in the office all the time, sometimes they're not. So my thought process was, you have that ability to have the 2 days and then let it be managed by the executive director and their supervisors and at your discretion. And should there be a problem, then that would be one that you would handle. Let's see. Is that it? That's layman's terms. Is there a consensus on that? Dr. Okay, thank you. Okay, I think for the record, Ms. Firestone, there was a consensus. And then maybe we can present that to the full commission and give you some direction. Does that work for you, Ms. Eden?
Yes, thank you.
Week. Dang, Dr. McGraw. I mean-
Sorry. And I guess I gotta talk louder. The thing I get concerned with is that when I hear Ms. Heater, I'm hearing a bunch of concerns actually that I'm not sure we're all understanding. Like, from an executive director point of view, it's hard to be creative, right? Because you have to manage a lot of different people. They have to be creative, and creativity comes from boredom, and boredom comes from when you're in office and you have nothing to do, right? So it's, as a teacher, I often have to manage whether I am giving the students enough downtime in order for them to create something versus giving them enough activity so that my administrator sees them busy, right? But there's a weird balance in there that it's very hard to manage. And I feel like 2 days a week, I don't know. I mean, it's fine. I just think it should be less. It should be harder for them to take advantage of that opportunity to work remote. Like, it should be, I don't know. I just feel like it should be something that if I'm working remote, it should be for a really good reason that I'm working remote. And it should be worth me sending an email, a text, or whatever communication. So 2 days a week sounds like you don't have to be in the office, and versus 2 days a month or 2 days every 1 day a quarter, 3 days a quarter. I have a tough time with 2 days a week. I'm sorry. I thought it was 2 days. I really thought it was 2 days a month we were discussing, which seemed to me like, oh, that makes sense. I'm going to schedule all of my meetings this one day where I can be remote. Maybe I'll be in the car. Maybe I'll be at home. Maybe I'll be somewhere. Maybe I'll be on the telephone. But
I'm gonna give you.
I mean, it's fine. If Ms. Heater, if you feel like that's good for your group, great. It just,
Your thoughts, Dr. McGraw, are not dissimilar from some other folks who have said that. We are also balancing, to Dr. Newbill's point, we are also balancing new employment standards where folks, particularly in a competitive environment, for some of our folks, I mean, we have highly skilled workforce, that some of those opportunities to have flex schedules and other organizations and those who want to recruit out of our organization, that's becoming a standard. A number of folks in the private sector that I work with have an automatic 2 day a week flex schedule. And that's offered up as part of the work. So, but to your point, a number of commissioners brought that up too, is, wow, that seems like a lot. That's 40% of the week. So and that's why we're having a discussion here. But Ms. Heater, I think you had some points, didn't you, ma'am? Oh, this is a pain. This is a pain in the ass. Moving this
I-
microphone.
I wholeheartedly agree about sort of that preservation. I think it goes to what Chairman Davis said as well about, I think our staff does a really good job of managing their tools. I do think that they, don't do the let's just block the Zoom calls and that kind of a thing. But yeah, I mean, I think we're all sort of, as society, we're dealing with that navigation. And I think that built-in downtime that you're talking about is kind of precisely what we're trying to sort of preserve. So I think two things. I will try to come up with some ways to better communicate to the executive committee and the full commission the volume of activity that our staff members are undertaking. Because I think that candidly, 2 days a month, the assumption that there are 2 days a month that staff don't have anything going on is untrue. Staff have something going on 32 days a month. I mean, literally. So I think it's a matter of being able to, just as Mr. Spoonhour said, take a look at your schedule and see. I mean, yesterday I started my day here at the Community Foundation with the CBTA Finance Committee in the morning. I think I was in, we did some hybrid calls where 4 of us sat in a room and then we were on video with the other people. And we did that for 2 calls. Then we took a break and then other people went and dispersed and went there where they needed to do. I did the rest of my calls in the afternoon. Then I had an in-person meeting in the afternoon. I mean, that's, I think, a pretty typical day for many of our staff members. So I think we're trying to be able to create that opportunity where the in-person is a good fit, but the virtual is also a good fit. And it doesn't happen on the cadence of monthly. It really is more of a weekly ebb and flow based on the organizations that we support.
Thank you for that input, Doctor. That's why we've got diverse ideas and I know they're not all just opinions. They come to you from your experiences and what you're working with. So, all right, well, Ms. Heater, sounds like you've got some things to put together.
Yeah, I think I have a good sense. And I just wanted to say, I really appreciate the discussion. I think every time we talk about this, it's clear to me, and I think it's clear to the staff that it's not an easy topic to figure out. And I think that everybody appreciates your all's willingness to consider I think it's really great to be able to say to our staff that the executive committee and the commissioners care about our staff. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. I am going to just do a brief review of key imperatives. We'll do a more formal update on this, but since we just adopted them last month, I just wanted to kind of hit some highlights. Key imperative number 1 is preserve our financial position. You will hear our audit report at your next meeting. So the finance committee will be taking that audit report up. We aren't expecting any kind of surprises or concerns from the auditors, but so stay tuned on that one. We've continued to be able to move into building a more robust financial planning and reporting system. So we'll have kind of more, I would say, metrics of performance down the road, but we're pretty excited about moving into some consolidated platforms to make life easier for staff and our finance team. We had a couple of kind of cool things happen over the last couple of weeks as far as managing core operations. We received our closeout letter from the state on our Title VI compliance review. So that's a final stage of the federal certification review for the TPO. So we're happy to have achieved that compliance on that. We also did receive earlier this month word from Virginia Department of Emergency Management that all of the grant applications that we submitted this spring have been approved. So a total of $385,000 across, I believe, 7 grants will be awarded, administered through PlanRVA. Many of those are pass-through awards to be able to support the Emergency Management Alliance and their regional emergency management preparation. It's everything from public outreach, regional CERT coordination, training and exercise events for our regional emergency managers. I think we've got some work in there on providing supplies to be able to stand up mass care shelters. And we have had some really cool conversations about how to continue to support the growing need in the emergency preparedness space. As you know, all kinds of different concerns and threats are on the radar now. we've got, I don't want to steal Mr. Spoonhour's thunder. So we've got kind of a lot, I think, underway with the branding initiative, and really have had some great conversations of late about who it is that we are branding to and why that matters, and kind of audience discussions and things like that. So more to come on that, but in conjunction with the move, you will see some adjustments to the look and feel of PlanRVA, and how we really start to be able to put I think a greater thrust on the work that PlanRVA does throughout the region, and in support of these other organizations that we coordinate and administer. So kind of more to come on that. We're going to hear today in the full commission meeting a little bit more of a follow-on from the Shared Values and Action Summit that was on September 30th. We've got Sherry Armstrong and Brian Anderson from Community Foundation and Chamber RVA on the agenda for the full commission meeting to talk a little bit about that. And next month, we've slated Serena Adhikari, who's here in the audience today, to talk with you a little bit more about our data competency. The idea that this morning you'll hear about sort of this big idea for how to move forward with a regional vision. And then next month, you can really hear a little bit more about how we can custom our capacity in data research and analysis to help support that initiative. The CVTA MOU that you all adopted last month has been finalized and executed. We've also taken additional steps to support the CVTA with their executive director search. So there is an RFP out right now for executive director search services. That proposal, those proposals are due on Monday, and we'll be working with the HR roundtable to move that forward to the CVTA's finance committee to select the firm, and then the recruitment process will start. So I'll keep you up to date on that. And I will take a pause there so I don't repeat myself in the full commission meeting.
Okay. Perfect. So we've got, we'll wait to hear back. I think, with concurrence from the executive committee on work schedule. I don't want to say remote schedule, but we'll wait to hear back before we bring anything to the full body for that. Anything else? Any comments by executive committee members? Ms. Firestone, it's 8:48, and we'll adjourn until full commission meeting. We are adjourned.